Good morning. We will get started. Welcome to the first Projects and Procurement Committee meeting today, Tuesday the 10th of February. I'd like to call for apologies. We have none. Good work, team. Identification of items of urgent business. Matters of minor nature. Stu?
I'm not sure of the timing, but the Strathallan Corner, I don't think the PX paper should be in PX. I think it should be brought into public. There's no costings there. There's nothing to protect in that way. And I'd just rather have this whole thing, the boil lanced in public.
That's fine. I have no objections to that. Okay, thank you. Councillor. Yeah, move. That's fine. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Any objections by officers? No? No? Good. Okay. Yes?
Through you, was there a... Sorry, Rosie, did you have a...
It's not necessarily an objection. I just wanted to note that some of the contractors and consultants mentioned in there, we haven't had that post-contractor consultant debrief yet, and so just important to note that what's being presented and discussed doesn't include the reflections and perspectives at this time.
Yep. Thank you.
My thinking, sorry, through you, Madam Chair, is just... and this one was quite obvious that it probably should never have, it didn't meet any threshold to be in PX, so we just have to work through that at a probably for you, Nige, to take away. Yeah, and I know you're aware of this one, yeah.
No worries. Declarations, conflicts of interest, any to be noted today? Okay, thank you. We'll move to the, just wanted to acknowledge our community board members. Today we've got Kathy from Temuka, Leanne from Pleasant Point and Shane from Geraldine. I'd also like to welcome Paul Haggith, who is online, our project manager for the Theatre and Museum project. Okay, we move to the most exciting part of this committee meeting, election of deputy chair. So I would like to call for nominations for the position, please.
I'll nominate Councillor Paddington.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Oh, two hands. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Everyone's excited about that. Well done, Stu. Stu, are you happy about that? Yes. Okay, so I'll like to move that motion that Councillor Paddington is named as Deputy Chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Jackson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, moving along. 5.2, finalisation of Projects and Procurement Committee terms of reference. So I'll invite Elliot to the table. Thank you.
Through the Chair, while Elliot's sitting down, so this paper facilitates your discussion of the terms and conditions that were handed down to you from Council. If you wish to change them or amend them to be taken back to Council. We've amended point 3, where we'll take proposed for further consideration and finalised one to the Council meeting on the following month. Does Mr Higby need to add anything?
I don't think so. For those that weren't here this morning, the intention of this amendment to 3 is just to give us more flexibility to work through the terms of reference, so we're not in a compressed environment doing so.
Do I have any questions with regards to the terms of reference that have been presented? No, everyone's happy. Well done. Okay, good work, team. So subject to point 3, which is slightly different to our papers, I'm happy to receive and note the report. We have had no discussion really on the terms of reference, and then what the recommendations with regard to tabling of the terms of reference and finalising in March. Would someone like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Burke. Seconder, please. Thank you. Again, Councillor Jackson, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Right, action register, page 13. Stephen, you're leading that.
Yep, through the chair, this paper is sort of one to tidy up the actions registers from the old committees into the new format. We have moved across 2 items at the moment. That is for the full and final report for Eggentie House Gallery and a standing report to be added to the action register to see whether the lowest tender ended up the lowest tender at the end of the contract period. These are both open and ongoing at the moment.
Just on those, our last real updates were August last year, apart from in November moving them across to the new committees. When are we expecting an update on the tenders and procurements and how Michelle's suggestion is going to work? And where exactly are we with the Eggentie Art Gallery? Have we paid all the bills for everything that's gone there? Is everything operating as it should?
So I'll answer the first one, tenders and procurement. The first standard paper for that will be coming at our next committee meeting. So I've seen a draft of that spreadsheet and it just needs a bit of finessing. Eggentie, I need someone.
With the Eggentie, everything's completed. Unfortunately, there is an issue with the dehumidifiers, so we're just wanting the contractor to fix that up before we pay that bill. But other than that, the building works are complete.
Sorry, Stace. Yep. Can you give an explanation to that? Is it not working? What does it do? What parts of the gallery does it affect?
Limited understanding, but it's in the octagon section, and it's one unit installed on the wall, and I believe it had a fault from the start, so it's a faulty unit.
And just with regards to close out of the project, I presume that wouldn't be our next standing committee, but perhaps the one after, that the closeout report could come. Are you comfortable with that, Michael?
Yeah, the CE and I have discussed it, and we'll have something together for you.
Great, thank you. Any further questions with regards to the action report? Otherwise, we'll receive and note the actions register. I'm happy to move that. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Mr. Wilson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Move to the procurement policy endorsement. I'll welcome Brendan and Nigel to the table. Thank you.
Good morning, committee. This report seeks your consideration and hopefully endorsement of the draft procurement policy to enable it to proceed to full council. I'll mainly take the report as read, but just a couple of comments. Firstly, this policy is a framework to enable council's procurement activities to be aligned and, most importantly, be consistent. Some of the key values that we have considered in undertaking the review have been to build transparency, accountability and probity through it. And I'd also just note that Council has requested that this committee through this policy, or rather Council through this policy, considers the petition of Ms Tracy Howard in relation to their petition to not undertake procurement with companies involved in activities on occupied Palestinian land. And so you'll see that that's part of the report as well. We're very happy to take questions. Thank you.
While I do not condone at all what's happening in Palestine, and obviously this is totally targeted at Israel specifically, there is a tail to this whole thing, and potentially with what America is attempting to do now. So the President to bring a consortium of other countries into that. Each one of those will have an input into how what occupation, what happens on there, the development on Palestinian land that will most likely preclude much of input from Palestine. Are we going to incrementally include all these companies that just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming? While we acknowledge it, I think at the moment it's specifically too narrow, it's very targeted, and you then couldn't stop it from the tail from growing with everything else that is intended to happen there. So I have significant reservations from that perspective.
Look on. Part of it's only a small part of it, I guess, but important to those that have come to council previously. And I wonder if there's a way, and I totally respect that position and agree. Is there just some sort of high-level ethical clause that can be built into our thinking around procurement that might cover some of those sort of things rather than be specific to any one, current world crisis. Yeah.
A high-level ethical statement was something that we tentatively considered in preparing this advice. It gets slightly tricky to operationalise that, because then it becomes subjective as to what ethical standard is being held to and the like. So there is, there's benefit and risk on both sides, I would suggest. There is certainly benefit to, for example, or potential benefit in putting a clause into the policy that would say that if officers deemed that there might be ethical implications with a certain procurement, that they'd flag that as part of the exercise, and that could be done. But then, of course, holding that to account becomes tricky in terms of why was X not flagged, why was this flagged, and we think it shouldn't have been. Where is the standard being applied? If councillors are happy with that risk or that degree of variability, then that's certainly something we can look at. That is absolutely an alternative. The key aspect, I suppose, of Ms Howard's petition was the UN resolution and the fact that New Zealand had been a signatory and indeed a member of the Security Council at the time, and in her petition and signed by others, that was a key aspect that gave it, I suppose, greater weight and legitimacy. That's not us as officers recommending that it be endorsed, to be clear. We have no view on it because it's not a technical matter for us to advise or make a recommendation on. But just to reiterate, I think that was the key aspect that they were stating, that New Zealand as a country had signed up to X, and therefore they were looking for that to flow through to local government policies. In the report, it notes that there are some councils that have adopted that wording or a variation thereof. There are other councils that obviously have not, and there's the position from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade that whatever decision council makes on this matter it's not going to clash with government policy. That 2024 advice that we received hasn't been updated. I haven't been able to receive any confirmation from MFAT that there is any additional advice or updated advice on that. So just a few remarks on that point. Anything to say on that? No.
I think also we'll keep an eye on MFAT and as things progress, and whether we are going to imply sanctions on US at any point that other countries are doing, we'll keep the policy updated in that regard.
I'm just waiting for the dialogue over there in case they're bringing forward some new information. I know I'm still learning how things work around here, but I was rather surprised to find this here, that we were considering something that I believe is international political position, which I didn't think would come into here. So I'm just saying from a newbie, I understand what their issue may be, but I was surprised to see that come to this point, and that would be part of our consideration.
The reasons why it was is, I think it's back in June of last year, we had the petition that we found and was presented to us in a public forum, and it was the day that we were looking at this policy. So it was decided on that day that we would wait until we're in this position to then make a decision on it. So that's the history to the reasons why it's here today. I thought it was excellent, point 25, around councillors, what for us to consider when we're looking at this question. So I really appreciate those 3 questions. And for me, I think 25.3, what are the advantages, disadvantages and risks of each option? And there is none, which has been identified. So for me, I too sit with to decline to endorse the proposed wording. So I think what we'll do is we'll talk about the policy. Any questions to the policy that's in front of us, because Brendan and Nathan done some excellent, Nigel have done some excellent work getting it into this position. So if I could just get everyone to refocus on the policy, and then we can talk about the inclusion of the wording. Does anyone have any questions to the policy itself? Thank you, Councillor Pitt.
Nigel, you might be able to give me some perspective. I'm surprised we're dropping the 5% for local procurement under 100K because we're here to support our local contractors. How many sort of contracts, are we talking one or are we talking regularly? Because I think we should still have 5% in support of our local contractors. So, thanks.
I think from a practical point of view, Councillor Piddington, contracts under $100,000 would generally go local unless it was something specific or monopoly supply. Having that 5% weighting on it would make not a material difference in reality. We've been through this on a number of occasions. We've had it in, we've had it out, we've had it in our weighting attributes, we've had it in our pricing attributes. All of those things we've reviewed, and we've come to the conclusion that the vast majority of those contracts or those agreements under 100,000 are going to be local anyway.
Yeah, look, a little bit of the same view of Stu. I think it's around messaging to the local community, and the history of this is, criticism that we've contract lands out of whether it's small or large is just around that. It needs consideration, and I think you get the likes of the chambers and those sort of ones representing local businesses that wouldn't be happy with it being excluded. So my view is that it should stay, even if it doesn't have material effect on a decision. A question from me through you, Madam Chair, is around, has always been my pet, around the supply selection process, around direct appointment, and the challenges that I have is around delegation to council officers. And I feel sometimes the process breaks down when we're dealing with smaller numbers, and that they can directly appoint, up to, appropriate level, in theory up to 100,000. But to me that means, I sort of want to know what the process that sits under that. Directly appoint, if you get 10 or 20 in a year up to 100K and you directly appoint, does that mean you're not being competitive in the market? I think this policy needs to quite clearly define that, because that's where we lose money. I think that's the challenge that we've had in the likes of parks in the past. We've had, a couple of $1 million worth of discretionary money that you use, or not rightly or wrongly, but there's not necessarily a competitive process. And so a company has got the work because they're doing work in the area. We'll let you do this work. It's 20 grand. That's fine. Could it have been 18 grand? Could it have been 16 grand? We don't know because we haven't had a competitive process. So I'm just interested in how we get into that to protect ratepayers' money without, being overly onerous. The key thing with that, though, is it's someone that has this delegation. They're getting a couple of quotes versus one. I just think that's a real high level of trust with ratepayer funds.
perhaps I can have the first go at responding to that, and others may build on it as necessary. The policy in another part clearly signals a far more robust use of what I consider to be business cases, but what I'm advised are more correctly referred to or called project initiation documentation. So the key point there is that it's not just about who has the ability to sign off, it's about the wider context in which that procurement takes place. Why are we doing it in the first place? What's the rationale? What are the alternatives? What are the benefits and costs? So I think it's important that the policy is considered within, or rather that part of the policy, in terms of who actually is able to sign it off, is considered within that context, that there will be that more robust framework in place in the future. Now, I'm not across what all of that documentation looks like. I think that would possibly be a question for the CE, maybe Rosie, at an initial outset. But what we are looking to do in this policy is to utilise, those wider suite of changes that are occurring, so that procurement can occur within that. At some point in any organisation, there needs to be a point at which we say, below this level, X can occur, above this level, Y can occur, and so on and so forth. We've put in those numbers based on mainly two things, sort of the 20 to 100, and then the 100 and above, based on mainly two things. Firstly, a review of how other councils do it to see, what's the general environmental scan, and then secondly, given the size of our organisation, the fact that we have very large units, very small units, from a budgeting perspective, I mean, in terms of the expenditure they deal with, how do we, and given that this is a policy for all of them, rather than just a procurement policy for water, a procurement policy for parks, a procurement policy for property, for example, how do we balance out those competing interests? So we've landed at that in draft form, and whether you think we've struck the right balance or not, that's the key point. Yeah, I hope that addresses some of your question.
I guess, Brendan, to the Mayor's point, and I've been challenged, and it's human nature, if you've got a good contractor you go back to and trust, and it just flows nicely, but occasionally we get challenged, why is the same contractor doing all the council work? When do I get an opportunity? So I think, I understand what you said, but I think the Mayor also has a point that, how often are we refreshing those contracts, re-looking at them, giving everyone a crack? Not everyone can get the work. I get that, but we've just got to be seen to make sure that everyone that lives in the community gets an opportunity.
I think to that point as well, we will be building, or we've partially built, about 75% built, the procurement manual behind this, so it compartmentalises each of the business activities and suggests a methodology for each one of those, whereas a $100,000 expenditure or procurement for drainage and water would be tiny compared to property, for instance, or parks or something like that. So we've got to manage the policy as the overriding document, and we've got the specific operational activities occurring under that procurement manual. We'll also be working really quite closely with the program office lead and her assistant to ensure that we're following the methodology that everyone can understand. And I think there's been an awful lot of work done by that group to get to a point where we've got a presentation, I think, next month. And all that, inclusive of the GL restructure, will give us more opportunity to be able to report not only on the activities that are coming through the procurement end of things, but what the spend information is coming out of the financial system, and also be able to manage our projects so we don't get a complete budget spend on roading, for instance, and we've got no money left for the parks, the planting, etc. So we're doing a lot more strategic procurement decision making up front and a lot more reporting at the back end of things, so we can present the real picture of what the spend has been on that particular project.
I guess my last thing, that sounds good, Nigel, my last thing is when you have completed that we publicise it widely so businesses know how they can get council work, if that makes sense.
completely agree with you, Councillor Piddington. I think in the end we've offered the opportunity to a number of organisations, some have taken it up, that we can give them an education process. And once we combine all of these factors into an overall strategy for spend, let's call it that, then we'll be promoting that out to the local community as well as specific contractors.
I think as time goes on, we're going to have to potentially have another conversation when rates caps comes along, if it does come along, because if local is not competitive versus national, what does that do in terms of a rates capping? So we need to think that through going forward, because we do want to support local, but we also want to be competitive.
We'll see after November, Nigel.
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillor Piddington there with a supplementary sort of stole my thunder a wee bit, but you're right, mate. But on, 32, page 32, point 32.3 there, it was just about, providing those opportunities for local suppliers to better understand council's procurement processes and requirements. So, what is our plan of action? You already alluded to that, Nigel, but what is the rest of that plan moving forward to make sure that people are best schooled up on that?
I think it comes down to a rational decision-making process from at the point of does an activity need to occur? Do we need to secure some contract for some work? And then ensuring that we are actually planning that procurement, ensuring that we have a number of locals, if we have those organisations in our local district, and then we establish our business plan based on that. And it doesn't really matter if it's a large procurement or a small one, really. It's just a matter of saying, what are our resources available from a contracting point of view? Is there enough local? I mean, if we're doing, let's say, disposal of land or purchase of land for that matter, we've got enough resources here. We've got enough specialists to be able to cope with the requirements of the smaller value stuff. It's the larger contracts we would have to go out open market on gets anyway. So it's really just, and it's my understanding of what the community is offering, and being able to offer a conduit for contractors to call and say, hey, what does it take to get work for the council? What do I have to do? And I run through that process with those as part of our supplier onboarding process. So we ensure that we understand and categorise all of our vendors into particular groups to say, if we are looking for a lawyer, or if we're looking for a real estate agent, something like that, we have that list available. So there's no rationale for us to go outside the region for that.
Can I just flesh that out slightly with two very quick things, Councillor Jackson? The first thing is, bear in mind that this isn't necessarily just local suppliers getting work through a main contract, but it could be, for example, through subcontracting. And, take the theatre, for instance. There's been a very clear push there to ensure that local contractors are getting subcontracting work as much as possible. And the second thing is just to say, as Nigel alluded to, he's been working directly with suppliers to help them understand our processes and understand the opportunities for when they can get work, or how to best improve their chances. But that also includes, for example, presentations he's done to the local Chamber of Commerce and possibly other business groups. I'm not entirely sure. But there's definitely that desire there to work with suppliers so that they understand the rules of the game and how they can best maximise their chances of success.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. We're also looking at, as part of the strategy around the Theatre Royal build, is part of the evaluation process to ensure that we had measurable opportunities for local contractors. And Hawkins have promised a particularly large percentage to locals. So even if we're engaging with external or outside the council's district, we are engaging with those contractors, those tier one contractors, to incorporate local contractors, whether it be materials or labour, as a percentage, and we're able to track that through the process of the contract. So we'll have measurable results at the end of it as well to deliver these things.
I'm going to be a one-track pony, my apologies. I still don't support that table as it is. The challenge that I've seen over the years, and it's not right or wrong, but it's that relationship bias that people develop over time, and I don't think this table is enough understanding all the work that sits underneath this, and without seeing that, I couldn't sign this off. So I'll give an example, and I know water was used, but, you know, what's that? Yeah, in the policy itself, it's the supplier selection process table. Sorry, 24, yes, it is 20.
Just to clarify, you're referring to the direct appointments permitted up to 20,000, selector invited up to 20 less than 100? So attachment 1 is the current policy, attachment 2 is the draft policy, because what we wanted to do, given it's been quite a while since the first, since this policy was reviewed, and seeing as the report steps through what we consider to be the material changes, was just to enable you to see that. Obviously, we'd normally track change it, but it's just not possible in this case because the format's changed so substantially.
So help me out, what page is is it now then? What is the current or the proposed?
The proposed
Page 4.
page 28 through to page...
Oh no, what's the exact page on the table? That's a Palestinian.
It's sort of different table.
Oh, it's that
It's a different
monster one.
Yeah. It sort of doesn't have that same decision making.
Yeah.
So
it's 20,000. Yeah.
I might be of assistance. If you're referring to the supplier selection process in the current policy, that table with the ticks and whatever, that is one key thing that we have looked to try and improve in the replacement policy, because what we felt was that the current policy was not specific enough. There weren't sufficient controls and sufficient probity, because at the end of the day, we want councillors and the community to have some assurance that there's been a competitive process that's been followed. To my point earlier, the policy would need at some point to set some values, above this or below this, X can do Y, and above that, a different process occurs, etc. Our numbers are, as you can see, quite a bit tighter than what's in the current policy, and we appreciate any feedback as to whether or not what we propose, the 0 to 20, the 20 to 100 and the 100 plus, strikes the right balance or not.
It's found on page 31, clause 24.
That's a dog, isn't it? So just for clarity, nothing over 20,000 can be direct appointment. Is that what that says?
That's the crux of the policy.
So what does that, and so then my concern is around delegations, and under that $20,000 mark, where does the delegated authority sit? Is it at an officer level or is it at SLT level? And because it's around accountability. So to Councillor Piddington's point around, the same contract, getting the same amount of work, who do I go to at a high enough level that I should be able to get some understanding around that appointment?
If we're looking at procurement under 20,000, it's likely that'll be a purchase order process through ESCA, and that requires a one-up approval for every single transaction. So you can't do it alone.
And based off the current financial delegations, it's basically the chief executive and SLT that in the main have financial delegations. Other officers, based on my current recollection of the most recent changes, do not, and that's why the policy refers to procurement approvers in basically every instance. So, we could run you through an example if you wish, but let me know if you want it or not.
So if I just look at this, and I know I'm quite new, it seems to me that there's this trade-off, which is basically that the economic benefit, potential benefit of getting a lower price or versus local, reserving it for local or sort of whatever. Okay, so that's the trade-off sort of thing, you know. So how have you measured that benefit?
You're correct, Councillor Thomas. There's absolutely that trade-off in some instances. So how we have approached that is through, bear with me a moment, so clause 32, what we've got in the draft policy is procuring directly from local suppliers for less than 20,000, always considering local benefit as part of non-price attribute evaluation. We did have, in a previous version of the policy, the 5% local price premium. I've heard some views that there's a desire that that's returned. To be clear, the reason why we removed it from the version that you're looking at today was in the context of the rates capping environment. It was considered that that's possibly not a prudent use of funds. But to your point, it is a balance, and you as councillors are the ones that advise where that balance should best fit and where that priority lies. In terms of advice that we've received, I suppose, Venture Timaru kindly reminded us of a document from a few years ago that looks at the economic benefits of local, that shows that investing in local can have 4 to 8 times the benefit of money that goes outside the district. It recirculates within the local economy. But in terms of a wider point, how have we sort of measured that trade-off more widely? We haven't been able to. We don't have the tools or models to be able to say, if we were to simulate that at $200,000, what would that look like, or $150,000 or the like. We don't have the tools to do that. So this has very much been a case of, number one, what do other councils do? Number two, where does the appetite lie? And number three, what are the hypothetical trade-offs in terms of, let's say for the local price premium, possibly at a maximum council could be losing up to $5,000 per procurement transaction. Is that something that is palatable? And our advice in this is, within the context of the rates capping potentially coming in, possibly not. We think that's something that council should look seriously at.
So just to be clear, we can't actually measure that actual benefit, or you haven't got the tools to do that?
Do you mean measure
overall. So
local, or you measure
if we moved
trade-off?
it to the 20,000, how much money is the council going to save versus how much would the community benefit through economic development? You just gave some.
We can't give you an accurate number on that. Even if we were to ask, I don't know, Infometrics or something like that, they could give you an answer based on a bunch of assumptions. We could try and do that for you. It probably wouldn't be as good as Infometrics, I'm sure. But yeah, we don't have the tools to be able to give you that information in any sort of, with any high degree of confidence. Yeah.
The only benefit, if I could, apart from tightening up rules and things like that, is prudent use of funds without having that local, whatever it's called, local premium sort of thing. Is that right?
That is the focus.
Yeah.
The only way Councillor Thomas should be able to measure that is by analysing each business that we use. So how many staff do they have, how many live local, it would be quite a significant exercise, and is that the role of our procurement team? So it would be a significant job.
I think also to that point, Councillor Scott, is also when we're looking at, for instance, the Tier 1 contractors for the Theatre Royal, they're bringing in people from out of town. So they're going to be utilising our restaurants, using our facilities across the region for the year. So there's those benefits as well, that we are able to assess that and ask the contractors to present information based on that. So we're trying to focus on it and try and give us that benefit to offset the potential for a weighting for local.
Only thing I would say is that that's a completely different situation. We're talking about much smaller levels of contract, and I just, Madam Chair, that we have already got a measure, a broad measure, which is the 4 to 8 times through VT, so it could be applied. Yeah, I would. This is not a question, but I would support keeping the local premium. Okay.
My only question, and I've asked you both this before, and that's around the reviewed period. So I'm going to bring that up again. Here we have the review is every 6 years with a 3-year internal review. That's clause 18, and I think that's too long a period in the current environment, especially with the way that the government's going, and I would prefer to see that reviewed every 3 years under the current situation. I'm finding that the infrastructure space is forever changing at the moment under reform, and so I just have a personal view there that should be 3 yearly. I think 6 is too long. I mean, this one hasn't been reviewed since 2015, and look how it's got away on us.
Pretty good.
This has come to the table about 6 times.
Done pretty good.
It has. I think to your
Some
point,
would beg to differ.
Madam Chairperson, policy should always be living documents. So if there was any significant change to the environment decision-making that would affect decision-making, we would update the policy anyway. This is really just a measure of, say, once you have a policy that is as not open, but certainly as flexible as this one, we have the procurement manual which will change as operational things change. So that was the reason why we recommended the 6-year review.
And very briefly, whatever council decides is the appropriate time period for a full review is obviously fine. The key thing for council to reflect on, I think, in considering this is how often does it think that a full review is necessary that involves consultation, full reporting and the like, bearing in mind that whatever decision you make, 3 years versus 6 years, we will still have the annual monitoring in place through the annual stock take. The policy owner will still be required to report that, and that information will be available to council, so you can see how the policy, if you wish, you can see how the policy is performing in real time, raise concerns, etc. So.
Okay, you win, Brendan. No, just kidding. No, okay, so I think we've got a few things to break down. So I think, Mayor Nigel, we have satisfied your point around the, well, not really, but the 20k to 100k.
Yeah. So on that point, my only thinking, and it might be more for delegations, is, and this is accountability, I think anything up to 20,000, so I'm comfortable with a lower level sign-off, one up for a few thousand, but anything up to 20,000, 5 to 20,000, I don't see why that shouldn't be signed off at an SLT level. And then they have full accountability. And then as a governance team, it's really easy to monitor. And then they get better monitoring over expenditure within their budgets, which they are accountable to Nigel and to us for. And I think whether it sits within here or more likely delegations, that would give me a higher level of confidence. So I can go to anyone around that table and they can give me the utmost confidence that they know where every dollar within their budget is getting signed off.
So maybe you've got to have your sister policy sitting here with us, because I haven't got the delegation policy sitting with me. I need to go and get that. Can you get that? Because the delegations, in the pecking order, delegation will trump this policy. So anyone that signs off 20,000 has to have the delegation. So can you respond?
So the current delegations manual, just to be clear, says that the Chief Executive has financial delegation up to 750,000. The General Manager's asset and infrastructure, drainage and water and land transport 100,000. And then other staff with the approval of the Chief Executive, 50,000. Now that other staff, I'll need to find that other document, but from memory, it's basically only SLT anyway. And, you know, the delegations that existed previously to say Tier 3 unit managers has been stripped right back. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have that accompanying document immediately available. There is also a list of, credit cards, etc., which is mainly held by SLT, and then there are a couple others, such as the libraries manager, that's slightly smaller than that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that addresses most of your point.
Well, May, if you've got a concern about the delegations policy, then we'll need to bring that back forward to you to say, are you as a council still comfortable with the delegations?
I think apart from about 22, I think, have an amount for delegation. The vast majority of council officers have zero.
And bearing in mind that any changes to the delegations, including those financial delegations, are reported to council anyway, so you would be advised of, changes that might raise a red flag for you. Yeah. But at the moment, it's basically SLT that have financial delegations, basically no one else.
And is that, my question is that real practice?
So the ESCA system has got the process in there to meet the delegations. However, there is a little quirk in there, and that is why we're moving from ESCA to authority, because there are some quirks in there that need to be sorted.
So again, it's just having that confidence. So if I looked at all the SLT in the eyes, they would confidently say that they sign off everything, basically everything within their portfolios.
That is the quirk with ESCA.
Yes.
Because the whole reason we're moving ESCA is that someone with a delegation can go and book something on someone else's budget.
Yes, and I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there's more work to do in that.
Are you wanting the delegation?
Yeah, I think we need to look at that. I mean, it's a risk, isn't it? I think we've highlighted through this discussion that it's a risk.
Okay, so if we could put that onto our action register, that would be great, please, Joe. Thank you. Okay. Oh, yes.
Sorry, just to the CE. So I guess I'm in a mild panic where you could spend someone else's budget. Do you get a report on that? How do we know that's happening?
Still got the one-up process. So the staff member will put the procurement and their manager will sign it off. But unfortunately, like it was Andrew, he signs it off, but the other Andrew gets it.
ESCA doesn't decode GLs or work orders, and the sheer number means you're just you're scanning through, making sure the line makes sense, your code kind of lines up, but yeah, and there's a lot of admin.
But don't panic. I mean, we're under budget.
Right, and we're changing systems, so that's good. Now let's just go back to supporting local clause. Discussion at the table around it remaining. I would just like to get a view from the committee members, or do you want to put that forward as a motion? Me and Nigel, you'll move that?
Yeah, I'd like to see it stay.
I'd like to see it stay. Do I have any seconders?
Can I just challenge you on that?
Yes.
So you're quite comfortable to have a premium of 5% on the costs when we're going to be in a rates cap? It concerns me because I've got to actually manage this place and we don't have a really strong definition of what local means, that to me is an issue too, because you could go down to Washdyke and, I don't know, go buy some bolts from some bolt outfit. It's a nationwide franchise versus like Mighty 10 is a franchise type environment, whereas Bunnings isn't. You know, and they are still local people working in those shops. So I just go, yeah, how does that work? It's quite tricky.
I think that where it's not local would be when you go to the Christchurch bolt shop in, you know, Braham Street in Christchurch. I think that's clearly not local. Yeah, look, I think if it's going to be that much of an issue into the future under rate capping environment, you can deal with it at the time. But I don't think it sends the right message to take out that small premium that actually, if you look at the history of it, you know, local businesses really fought to get that into our policy to begin with. So to have that local point.
Briefly on the definition of local, you're correct, it is tricky. There are various ways of approaching it, and each way of defining it has operational implications in terms of how you manage that. And where we've arrived at is sincerely where we think is, you know, best balance is ensuring that money is staying as best as we can arrange within the local economy, whilst also making it operationally, you know, straightforward and clear to administer, as opposed to going to the company's register and seeing, you know, where is this company, you know, based, and where are the owners based, and okay, therefore we assume that they live in Timaru and the money's staying in the district, etc., etc. In terms of the effect of the price premium, it is possibly something that we could, if it was in the policy, possibly something that we could monitor over time, because as part of the procurement decision, you know, it would need to be quite, it would be relatively explicit. You know, X has received the contract under that clause. But again, to the Chief Executive's point, Council needs to consider that within the environment of potentially rates capping and wider prudent use of funds.
I think with regard to what the future holds with regard to having to tighten our belt, I just have a problem with the 5%, because I think it sort of sends a signal, and I think it's about a discipline. And a local, and I'm all for local, don't get me wrong, but, you know, if the local company can't compete with an outside company who has to probably deal with accommodation, travel, things that they don't have to deal with, they should be competitive anyway. And so I'm just sticking my neck out saying I don't support the 5% be sitting in there. Like, I know there may be a thought that rate capping may not be a reality, but it will be a reality of one form or another. I think it will come in. Whether it's going to be still at 2 and 4, I don't know. It could be changed from that, but it's all about discipline and about setting an example. So I have an issue with the 5%.
All right, well, this will be good, because I think what we need to do is we need to look at the wording that's in front of us, and the proposed change is to the removal of the local price premium. So Mayor Nigel has, he's happy to move that it remains within the policy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jackson. All those in favour, please say aye. Raise your hand, please. And against, Graham and myself. So well done. So that is going to stay in, Brendan. Okay. Yes, that's fine. Now let's talk about the wording. So if I just push you all to page 20, we have the main procurement policy, which is option 1. Endorse the procurement policy as attached, and then we need to give them advice, the officers, advice on whether we decline the proposed wording for the inclusion in the procurement policy or accept it. So I'll start with first the endorsement of the procurement policy. I presume everyone is comfortable with what has been presented. So now I move to whether we want to include or decline the endorsement of the proposed wording. So I think we'll start with the declined, because I feel like there was a little bit more that way. So do we have anyone that would like to move that we decline the proposed wording for inclusion in the procurement policy? No one's having to move it. I thought you would, Councillor Burt. Oh.
I will do so, but I also want to do it from the context of why we're making that decision.
Okay.
And this is in no way condoning or supporting, what's happening there, which is an absolute travesty. It's just the ability to enforce it, understand it, and understand the complexities of what would have to carry on with this later on. Thank you.
I'm happy, yep. You're happy to move it. A seconder? No.
So just a question for the floor through you, Madam Chair. So you talk about the issue of the work around having a clause like that within a policy. Would that, the work involved in that versus a high-level ethical clause, there would be work in both of those, wouldn't there, to uphold?
That's tricky to give you an initial answer. My best advice at the moment, sitting here right now, would be both are doable. If we were to put a high-level ethical clause within it, there's just a greater degree of risk and variability in terms of the outcome. And the example I gave before, officers might be challenged for why they did or did not flag a particular issue when it came time for this committee to consider awarding a contract, or indeed lower level procurement, something below 750,000. That's within the Chief Executive's current delegation. And the risk simply there is if there's no clear yardstick, then we can't necessarily expect consistency unless we were to do a wider piece of work around that, which in and of itself might be controversial, and based on the discussion today, this committee might not think is the proper place of council. Yeah.
And sorry to ask officers for opinion, but as far as actual risk, I would expect would be less than minor as far as...
Completely agree.
Yeah, thank you.
It would be less than minor to put a high-level clause in it.
Point was less than minor that we would actually be trading with a company associated, yeah.
Because, at the end of the day, why are we stopping? Why would we stop with just Palestine and what's happening there? Why not, at the moment, Russia prosecuting the war against Ukraine? Why aren't we looking at that aspect and what have you? The Congo with, wherever, Aceh in Indonesia, all the stuff that's going on there. CIA, sorry.
Councillor Wilson.
Well, I'll just add to that too, like with regard to human rights activity in China, for example, and here we have the country as one of our leading trading partners, so you can go all over the globe with this.
Yes.
So I do support the inclusion. So my understanding from reading the report is that we don't actually trade with any of those organisations at the moment. And just to sort of Councillor Burt's point that this might cause us difficulties or something, I doubt if we don't know, but it's a probability that we won't deal with any of those countries in the future. We don't know. Okay. The New Zealand government has endorsed the recommendation from the United Nations, but hasn't actually, so I might have the wrong terminology there, but basically hasn't actually implemented anything. Other councils, so Nelson City Council and Christchurch City Council, have adopted a similar policy to what was in your report. And I'm just in the last year, 32,000 Palestinians were displaced. So what we're talking about is people where the Israeli government has gone into a place, destroyed the homes, buildings, infrastructure of Palestinians so that they could construct Israeli settlements on Palestinian land. So I'm opposed to that. So I would support inclusion of this. I realise that it's not perfect, but it does send a very good statement to our community about what we stand for.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. My question to myself when reading this was, should council hold an official position on this matter? To myself was no. So my vote today will be to decline the proposed wording. So I think it's time now that we put it to the vote. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Burt on declining the proposed wording, and I'm happy to second that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Councillor Piddington, where did you stand just then? You said nothing. Okay, great. Okay, so thank you. So I didn't get that. No. So we're not that connected. Yeah.
That says it all.
Okay, so officers, you are to decline the endorse the proposed wording. Okay.
And just to be clear, because of the terms of reference of this committee being to endorse the policy, full council, lucky you and others, get to do this all again on the 24th. So we'll bring a paper saying that this committee has endorsed basically the policy as it is, but not including the wording around Palestine and including the local price premium of 5%. Correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the only changes that I've heard. And then full council can deliberate on that.
Madam Chair, do we, what's the process for communicating with the people that petitioned us?
No, so what Brendan was just explaining is it comes back to full council, so they are welcome. I'm sure the Mayor would welcome them to a public.
Yeah, largely this has come direct to my email, so I can email an update where this is at. And just on that, I would like to thank the officers for the work that they have done on this, because there has been some work. But again, I go to the level of comfort, and the reality is, yes, it is, some would say council should be sending a message. There again, I don't think there's international policy is within our wheelhouse. We've got enough to worry about, not taking away from the challenges within these areas of New Zealand. But yeah, I mean, look at the time that we've spent debating this, and actually that time would probably be better spent on the issues that we have in front of us at a local council level. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll now move to report 5.5, and I think, do we have, yes, Paul is online, I can see his initials there, and Mr. Cooper will come and join us.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. We'll just present a report on the update, the Theatre Royal and Museum project. Happy to take the report as read. There are a few highlights there from the dashboard from Paul Haggarth's report, which is coming later. And we seem to be, I see the main headline really is that we remain on time and on budget at the present time. Paul Haggarth's available online, I believe, to comment for any questions that may come.
Do we have any questions to our public report?
Just a couple on page 67 around the progress of the Criterion Hotel in Chinese Gardens. I mean, I thought with the Royal Garden in the government's campaign of austerity, we would just sell that if we don't have a use for it. I know we floated having another reserve there, but that doesn't take too much sense.
So those two particular buildings are outside of this project. So we've been asked by council to come with an option of what do we do with those.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, my understanding, Councillor Piddington, is that property are looking at how to handle those buildings. There is some interest in the Criterion, not so much in the Chinese gardens. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, yeah, basically, it's right. Just note that the Chinese garden restaurant are all pre-1900, so they are historic buildings, effectively, so there would have to be some consenting process to go through that with Heritage New Zealand. The Crichton Hotel, yeah, we are looking at a number of options there, including discussion with TDHL, Heritage Trust, and also looking at what the demolition impact is and having a sort of supporting frame for facade, and whether you have that or not.
Have one question, and that's 5.5 around the council's made an offer of employment to the preferred candidate for the theatre manager role. I just wondered when the start date was.
So a letter has gone today to the candidate with the employment agreement, and we anticipate that coming back in the next day or two. So it's a candidate that is currently residing in the UK, New Zealander, who's coming back and currently managing a theatre in the UK.
Okay, so yes,
what was the calibre of the candidates like? I mean, do we have a lot of people that applied for that job?
It was varied, through you, Madam Chair, but we certainly we interviewed 3, and the preferred candidate was a standout. He's already rang a theatre, but more than that, he took that theatre from a place where it wasn't performing at its maximum and brought it up to a higher level. So we feel that we've got the right person for the job.
So sort of we're thinking it'll be a couple of months before they get here. Okay, great, thank you. Any further questions to report 5.5? Okay. Then I'm happy that the Projects and Procurement Committee receive a note, the Theatre Royal Museum Project Status Report for January. And Councillor Jackson's happy to second that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Okay, report 5.6, Aorangi Stadium Project Status Report. I'll open it up for questions. None. Excellent. Gosh, poor Paul sitting in his car somewhere probably. So if everyone's happy with that status, oh yes, Councillor Wilson.
I was just going to add that one of the things I enjoy doing at the moment was when I have people visiting, I take them for a tour around the town, which I love doing. And one of the things that I do, I would take them up to Morgan's Road and we get out and stretch our legs, and people just can't, they just can't believe the size of what we're doing up there. And it's a pretty exciting project to watch develop and come out of the ground. I just want to add that. That's just something to be proud of, and I deliberately go up there with any visitor.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think we're standing up, I say we, it's the royal we, of course. The first concrete panels are being stood up today, so yeah, we'll see a lot of progress as it starts coming out of the ground. Yeah.
And also just on the community fundraising aspect, we have a very motivated group of locals ready to hit the ground for their fundraising campaign. So watch out there, $2.4 million to be raised by our community, but amazing group of people from the business community to local community to our young people. So it's going to be really exciting. I'm looking forward to watching that progress over the next 12 months.
Through you, Madam Chair, and I'd just like to highlight too, I was out at Thompson's this morning the first panels leaving their new facility, which is just amazing. And just one, I think, highlights that, local capability. A firm can pretty much do that project, almost 100% locally. I've got to say, I did get to use the gantry crane and put a panel on the truck. So if there's a panel with a couple of wee chips, no. But no, they've done a fantastic job, and it just highlights our capability. And if you look at those and some of the earth moving companies and some of the others, there's nothing that we can't do from South Canterbury, and we just need to really embrace and look at those opportunities to bring money back into our district. Thank you.
So that, I hope you got lots of pictures of that, Rachel, over there with the mayor. Oh, good work. That's great. Okay, well, our job is to receive and note the Aorangi Stadium project status report. Would you like to move that, Councillor Piddington? Go for it, and seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Okay, and as agreed, we are going to pull the Strathallan Corner redevelopment status update report 9.4 out of public, and we will now welcome Rosie. Thank you.
Kia ora, good afternoon. Just presenting this report to be taken as read with the observation that officers have attempted to collate a factual update for you around the status of the project, but that this report is not serving the purpose of that independent review, and that the debriefing with third parties, including utilities, contractors and consultants, hasn't yet been undertaken. So with a view, Councillor Piddington, to your comment about lancing the boil, there's some limitations here, and we just be great if we could be a little bit careful taking it as read pending those further inputs. So however, having said that, it is what it is, and we invite your questions unless Andrew wishes to comment.
No, I think you covered it nicely there, Rosie. Yes, so there is certainly frustrations with this project, particularly around the time it's taken. Some of that was, I guess, in the planning stages, where we had funding, external funding from MB, regarding with the Tourism Infrastructure Fund, which had time load on it, so we were pushed in that respect, and probably we started the toilet, which to get that funding without the remainder of the actual project really designed and planned adequately to move on to that next stage. So hence, we were working on the fly a little bit and that was certainly not the way to do it. We welcome the review. I think we'll get some good learnings from it.
Yeah, look, I guess we do need to wait to the review to let it shuffle down, but part of the problem was what we communicated the finish times were going to be. We were the ones that kept moving, and the public's expectation around there. But moving on, I see there's still 214,000 to spend on the project. Can I have a breakdown of what that is?
You sure can, Councillor Piddington. So you would see it's split between the 64,110 of committed. So we've got purchase orders raised, and most of those relate to walls, handrails, the beams and the light poles, so those key structural elements. And then we've got the remainder. So there's a number of costs in there. The privacy screens, the seating, the portions of seating that haven't yet been installed, the strip lighting, the rear, there's some infill that needs to happen by the rear fence, etching and attaching of the Wi-Fi tiles, which is underway at the moment. And then we also left a portion of the change table, which I sent that email this morning. We're expecting about 4-week to install that one, but we've also left a portion to cover the costs of our internal parks team finishing the irrigation and the planting so that that can be capitalised to the project. Is that a sufficient breakdown, or you want numbers for each item?
No, where's the artwork in that, and how much is that going to cost of the tuna?
That's not included, so the artwork, because it's not approved, it hasn't been approved. So what we're saying with this report, the costings, the final cost of the project is in accordance with Council's direction to limit spend to doing the basics. And given that this project's already working on carry forward, we didn't feel that it would be appropriate today to request use of, any portion of that remainder. So we would save that. And also following the independent review, the closeout report, the debriefing, all of that, you will have all the information in hand before you make that decision for the annual plan.
What's the artwork estimated to be? Because I note in here there's also talk of a second artwork in the next long-term plan.
Yeah.
And it just worries me, we talk about austerity in one hand and what we're going to do to save money, yet on the other hand we seem happy to spend quite considerable sums on other things. So
we haven't completed the detailed design for that artwork, and that means that any cost estimates are not watertight. To achieve the scale that's been shown in the WSP images that you've had, and the internal lighting and everything else, a very generous budget, including contingency, could be up to 125. But there's obviously options that would be presented to council at lower price points, but you wouldn't achieve quite that grandeur. And obviously, officers, we always, as we have done with this project, try and come in under budget, it's not target. But it would be no more than that amount is what we can say with confidence.
I guess my last point, though, is it's gone long over time. Contractors have been back and forth, and we say, let's celebrate we're under budget. I question how the budget was set in the first place, that you can have all this activity, people going back and forth and still being under. So I hope that's going to form part of the review scope.
Yeah, the budget was prepared based on the cost estimates at the time, and that's what we do with every project. The fact that the contractors have been going back and forward, yes, has caused an extra time, but has not really caused extra costs, because those contractors have been, they've been moving to other jobs. They're not charging us for that downtime at all. So we've probably been using them quite efficiently in many ways. They've been it's almost a fill-in job for them at times. So it keeps the costs down, that's what I'm saying. We've also used local contractors and solely local contractors, so we're really pushing, including the actual making of the paving that was done locally. Everything is we're doing our best there and keeping those costs down, and we are well under budget.
If I may add to that, there is a learning or an opportunity, because with this project we didn't receive the detailed design as soon as we were expecting. It meant that we engaged contractors more iteratively, and so you had multiple purchase orders or you had variations accumulating, and they were sense checked at every step in the process to make sure that they aligned with estimates and that they were in the scope of what we were intending to spend in fair price. However, in an ideal world, there would have been an opportunity to prepare, to package some of that work together, and so in some cases, you've got a deviation from an ideal process, but you may have escaped some of the consequences.
Yep. And my final thing, is, I've had complaints from artists around, the design was wonderful, there was shade where they're going to play, the top corner was going to be grass, it's turned to concrete. It just seems in this process, it's changed quite dramatically without those that first gave input or were using it to have any chance in the final product.
I really wouldn't want to comment on that without allowing the other consultants and contractors and people involved in that process to first participate in that discussion and then to have an independent reviewer look at that. I think what can be confirmed is that the final design does, notwithstanding aesthetic changes, it aligns as closely as possible with the original project brief, with the exception of the removal of those shade and shelter trees, which is not an outcome that anybody wanted. But in terms of the other changes in the design, I think we really need to give them a chance to comment first.
That design was approved by council too, that initial design.
Yeah, but you're talking about the variance from the initial to the one that was released in August, yeah. So if it's all right with council?
That's just the feedback I'm getting, and I just want to make sure the review covers all those points.
Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely delighted that the project, with so much public scrutiny, came in under budget. So, well done. Just out of that budget, and of course, we need to make as many savings as we possibly can, but from the feedback that I've had, and I know you've lost the shelter trees, or the shade trees, if you like, is there any room at all for some sort of shade in that area? Because obviously on a sunny day, it's almost unusable because of the sun and the fact there's no shade. So can we do something to remedy that, do you think?
It's something that we can probably look at, but the shade sails come at a cost, first and foremost, and there is an ongoing maintenance cost with them as well. But yeah, you know, you're putting them up, burning them down, you don't leave them up during the winter effectively. The trees, some of the trees will grow, there will be a bit of shade there. There is the way it's terraced can create some shade as well. People how are using it, I haven't seen too many problems with that area of it. But it's an improvement that we can look at, and that can be thrown in the mix with the artwork.
I think, though, where Councillor Jackson is going, it's both proposals, whether it was the concept design to where we are now, have shade sails in it. So the expectations from me is that they're in there. And so that they've been excluded is again a concern that we're not getting what we saw.
Sorry, just to confirm, the one from August didn't feature the shade sails, and the messaging in February when we discussed it was that the light poles, it would be possible to attach shade sails at a later point, in the same way that it would be possible to install artwork at a later point, but we were trying to stick to that brief to not include everything that would be nice to have. So to Andrew's point, there is still potential to include them, but they haven't fallen within that sort of core budget. There's also been some discussion in the community, and I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone, but again, where there are community groups who have a potential interest in owning the shade sails as an asset with support to have them in place, you know, for productions and things like that.
Yeah, look, I think this is one of the reasons this committee's born. I think we've acknowledged that we haven't done this perfectly, and I think there's, we all need to challenge ourselves on, on this from a governance right through to a consultant level, and the opportunity for this is in the learnings, and that independent report's going to be invaluable. And I think at that point in time, let's have a hard look at ourselves, rates capping and all that sort of future, taking that into account. But what is the amount of money that needs to be spent within the existing budget to get that to a point? But let's just follow that process, and I think that should be a good one. So let's review it. Then let's look at, is there something missing that should be there, and move forward. Just on there was some early challenges around skateboard use, etc. And that's just a wider, there's a few bikes and skateboards and what have you in the CBD at the moment. It's covered by cameras, and, kids will be kids. It is what it is. But is there any damage being reported, or have we seen any damage from skateboards doing rails or whatever they...
No, I'm not aware of any damage that's been reported from skateboard. The only damage that we've had is where someone vandalised the base of the Bob statue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and pulled off all the granite tiles, so, yeah, which we have repaired.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Just a couple of things from me. I firstly want to acknowledge the contractors who have worked on this project. The work is excellent. the level of detail, the workmanship has never been in question with this project. So I just want to acknowledge those contractors. They too, I have spoken to several of them, have been completely frustrated by this project, the way that we have delivered it. But as you say, the independent review will be warmly welcomed, I'm sure, by all. I think, you know, when we look at the concept to final design, I think that's an element we need to learn from. We, you know, are coming back to council and presenting it again with more solid budgets too. So, but I'm sure this will all come out of the review. One of my concerns I do have right at this moment though is the dependencies of this project. So a couple were highlighted in here. Susie, I don't mean to point you out, Susie, but there are some areas in here of talking about asphalting of car parks. There is quite a few dependencies with this project, and I wonder where are they being costed. So we're excited about being under budget, but at this very point in time, but who is collecting those dependency projects?
Thank you. Well, specifically for that car park area, there was a number of potholes before the project started, so it was at end of life. So there is a budget line within the plan, within my parking budget to deal with that.
We have talked about the lighting upgrade too, which I think we have talked about, and that's obviously got its own budget too, so that these are not reliant on this project. Perfect. Any further questions to this report? Sorry, I'll just go back to what we are doing. Okay, so we're going to receive and note the project status report for Strathallan Corner redevelopment. Do we still need this part? Oops, no, sorry, someone's pointing at me. And delegates authority to the Chief Executive to release the public excluded report to the public following the conclusion of the meeting.
I need it because you pulled it into the public.
Yeah, I know, but I apparently still need to say that out loud, so that's okay. Could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Mayor Nigel. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Piddington. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Okay, so now consideration of urgent business items. We had none. We had no minor nature matters. So now I will move us into exclusion of the public. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Jackson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thanks. Sorry, and I also move that Paul Haggith team projects be permitted to remain at this meeting, the public excluded, for items 9.1 and 9.2. After the public has been excluded because of their knowledge as project manager, this knowledge will be of assistance in relation to the matter to be discussed. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Mayor Nigel. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carry.